This episode was brought to you by The Greatest Counseling and Consulting by Dr. Kathleen Walls.
Dr. Kathleen Walls of the Greatest Counseling and Consulting provides a number of services, including leadership coaching, individual counseling, consultations, business development and strategic planning, and professional development trainings for you and your organization. To find out more about Dr. Walls, go to askdrwalls.com or give her a call at 215-843-3331. As always, be well and continue to live your greatest life.
Welcome to the Humanitarian Heartbeat podcast. I'm your host, Nia Imani, and I have the pleasure of welcoming Dr. Kathleen Walls, who is indescribable. I mean, I'm going to read your bio, but I think after this interview, everybody's going to understand why I said you're indescribable. Yeah, I'm just going to go into it because there's no word or phrase to describe you. So I'm just going to go into it. I'm going to read your bio and then we're going to go right into it so people can understand why you're so amazing. So Dr. Kathleen Walls, who you see with this beautiful smile, is the owner and founder of the G.R.E.A.T.E.S.T Counseling and Consulting in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. She is a clinician, leadership coach, educator, facilitator, and public speaker. Okay. Dr. Walls is also the author of 2 spiritually focused self-help books and the children's book series, The Adventures of Froggy T and Bunny, a hip-hop tale. And she has several series. The Reunion that came out in 2020, Bunny Gets Bullied in 2021, Feelings 2023, Froggy Foo and Mangu 2023, and Careless Clueless Cult of this year. Mm-hmm. Dr. Walls can regularly be found hosting her YouTube series, Dr. Walls and Friends, Sisters for Harmony, Stronger Together, Family and Finance, and Planters Knowledge Pop-Up Podcast. And you can see Dr. Walls on her YouTube channel, Ask Dr. Walls 525. She thoroughly enjoys traveling globally, incorporating a holistic perspective in the development of leaders, young people, students, and rising professionals, and helping people learn how to live their greatest life. Mm-hmm. She's amazing! It just gives me chills. So my first question, first of all, thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. I love spending time with you.
I love it too. I'm just so excited because I'm just so excited to hear the answers to these questions and everybody can just understand why I just love you so much. My first question that I ask all guests, who do you say you are?
I say that I am a child of God.
Perfect answer. That says so much. So what if somebody said, what does that mean?
That means that I have given my life to God to use me as a vessel in order to do God's work in this space.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I'm going to switch around the questions because I feel like this leads to one of the questions that I had to make sure that I asked you, or one of the comments when I said, please tell us how you knew who you were going to be, even at a tender age. Because I love when you tell me this. How did you know how you're going to be the person that you are today?
Yeah, when I was 5, that was when I first had that I recall having my first encounter with God. And it was just so clear. And, there was no question about who was speaking to me and what the directions were. And I was just like, okay. And it has been a consistent recommitment. I say every time I am asked to do something, to say something. And then a friend of mine who is a pastor said to me, probably somewhere between 2020 and 2021, he said, obedience is the highest form of worship. And I said, I never heard that. I never knew that. But it is something that I have actively worked on, I can say, since I was 5 years old.
Wow.
So, yeah.
And what does it look like being obedient when you're 5 to now? Is that you obeying your parents, or what does that look like? And how do you know when you're being obedient?
Yeah, yeah. I started laughing because my mind was sometimes it doesn't look any different because sometimes, especially when it's not something that you want to do, right? And I call those spiritual temper tantrums, right? So when that internal gut tells you that inner voice that you know is, in my phrase, leading you towards your greatest life, right? When that internal voice is asking you to do that which is aligned with your highest self, right? Your highest ethics, your highest integrity. And sometimes you don't want to do that. You know, the infamous, when they go low, you go high. It's like, no, I'm trying to get grimy with it, right? But that internal value system, your ethics, your morals show you a different way, and some would say, what would Jesus do,
Mm-hmm.
right? That again, it's the attempt to elevate oneself beyond what the physical is asking for you to do. And so that's what obedience looks like for me. It is choosing that aspirational, idealistic response, even if it is, how should I say, counter to what I may physically want to do.
That's deep.
All right. Because if we look at it from a test standpoint, meaning where 5 days, 5 minutes from now, 5 hours, 5 days, 5 years, 50 years from now, what response am I going to be the proudest of? Dragging somebody verbally on the internet, physically, right? When I mature past that, that's not something I'm going to look at and be proud of. And so to me, that's what obedience is. I know it is my greatest good, and trusting that it is, believing, knowing all of that, trusting, believing, and knowing that it's my greatest good. And that's what I choose each and every time.
That's beautiful. How do you even, I guess this may be a twofold question. How do
Yeah.
you know that you are living your greatest life, or how do you get to living your
Yeah.
greatest life?
One, let me just say, as far as obedience is concerned, it's a muscle that you strengthen over time. Because with each encounter with being obedient is an opportunity to choose that. All right. And like I said, sometimes you don't want to. And so, what your greatest life looks like is for each individual person to make that determination on what it looks like. And when those things get put into play, I remember asking myself, I don't know, as a teenager, I was like, can I have it all? And I was like, okay, well, what does have it all look like? Like, what does that mean to you? And I had to say, I asked myself any question I ask anybody.
Uh-huh.
And so it was like, what does that look like to you? And it was like being successful. Okay, what does successful look like to you? Well, it means being able to do the type of work that I want to do. It means making a certain amount of money so that I can afford the lifestyle that I want to. What does that lifestyle look like? Well, let's say I want to go out to eat every week. I want to get my nails done. I want to get massages. And I made a list
Wow.
of all of the things that I wanted to do so that I could say, I'm living my greatest life. And me going to get my nails done every, 14 days, me getting my fade faded every 10 days, me doing this, right? My husband's greatest life doesn't look like that. He ain't going to get his nails done. He's shaving his head every day, right? So we have very different realities, and that goes for everybody. So it's just getting clear and making adjustments when needed. So that's the other thing about your greatest life, is knowing that you have the freedom to choose again. This goes back to the free will right? And the obedience to say,
Mhm.
yes, I want to do this, or no, I don't want to do that. We have that ability.
Mhm.
And so for me, it's recognizing the freedom and the reality that I can create whatever reality I desire.
I love that. Is that the reason why you created the greatest counseling and consulting, and is greatest an acronym?
Of course it is. I love acronyms. So, so the greatest actually came unintentionally, as far as consciously on my behalf.
Mm-hmm.
One summer, it was the summer of 2005, and someone kept saying to me, "What's the name of your business?" I didn't have a business at
Mm-hmm.
the time, so be clear. So every time they would ask me, I would start to laugh, and what would come out my mouth was, "It's the greatest."
Mm.
And every time they would ask, the same answer would come. Again, I didn't have a business and I wasn't looking to have a business.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in February of 2005, in a very quiet moment, I heard that inner voice tell me that I would not be where I currently was employed
Mm-hmm.
come September.
Okay.
I didn't want to leave. I loved where I was. I loved the
Mm-hmm.
team that I worked with. I loved the work that I was doing. And I begged and pleaded God to change God's mind, change your mind.
You got the wrong child.
You got the wrong one. I heard you clearly. I'm gonna acknowledge that, but I ain't trying to leave here. And so I really need you to change your mind because it's all good up in this place.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kept saying it. And one of my girlfriends said to me, and she had never spoken to me like this before.
Uh-huh.
And she said to me, "You don't want to be anywhere where the hand of God is not."
I don't.
I do not. My
Right.
whole gut was ripped out in that moment. I was like, "Enough said."
Right.
And so, God, your will be done, right?
Mm-hmm.
The recommitment again. I heard what I heard. I'm not going to pretend that I didn't.
Okay.
Have at it. Whole summer goes by. I'm not thinking anything's going to happen. I get ready to go back to work. And it was after Labor Day weekend,
Mm-hmm.
getting ready to go, right before Labor Day weekend, excuse me, because it was professional development. We had to go in early. And I go back, and my supervisor says to me, "There's been some changes, and there's been a change to your contract that was secured in February.
Mm.
There's been some changes to your contract. We're having a meeting about it today, and I'll let you know what's
Mm.
up." And so I just start laughing because I already know what I've been told, right? Long story short, I end up resigning effective immediately. What was the date? August 31st.
Stop it.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yep. So September 1st, 2005, I went into private practice.
He said, just in case you weren't going to obey, it's happening.
It's going down. It's going down. And so I met up with a girlfriend, sister friend of mine who's an attorney, and we did all the paperwork and put everything. And when she said, "What's the name?" I was like, "The greatest." I
Wow.
had been conditioned all along. And so in my prayer, to God, I said, "I heard you clearly that it is to be called the greatest." I said, "But that's a lot to carry."
Mm-hmm.
When people hear the greatest, most people think of Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
And so, like, you're going to come in, I'm going to knock you out, knock out whatever, knock out whatever is going on and keep it moving, right? And so I'm like, "Lord, how am I supposed to do this?"
Right.
And in our conversation, it was like, "Would you be comfortable with an acronym?" Yeah, it'd be fantastic with acronyms. So now what does it stand for? And so what came very quickly was God restores excellence, activates talent. And I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, that's great, but you told me the greatest. So what is EST?"
Right,
And
right.
we struggled with the next E, but then finally it came. And so in totality, it is God restores excellence, activates talents, encourages spiritual transformation.
Mm. And how does that play a role in your consulting and counseling?
In everything. It
Mm.
plays a role in everything, honestly, because it is the knowing that God does restore excellence. right?
Mm,
And so when people come for counseling, it's usually because something's wrong, something has happened, they're not feeling secure or confident, certain, something. And so it's understanding God restores excellence. We were made in his image and his likeness.
mm,
So we got it,
mhm,
right? And somehow we forget that in this human process
mm,
that we are made from excellence.
mm,
And so as we reclaim it, it is restored. Now, we are reminded through our talents. God activates those talents in us. So, the ability to listen, the ability to engage with people, the ability to cook, the ability to sing, right? These are all of your talents that you
mhm.
use. We know in the Bible, it talks about, right, utilizing talents. Of course, it's
Correct.
referred to as money in that sense, but we can, extrapolate that
Sure.
and we can talk about, are we utilizing the talents that
Mm,
we've been given? And what happens is generally when we use those gifts and talents, other ones lie underneath them.
mm,
But we can't get to what's underneath until we work with the ones that are on top.
mm,
All right. And so for me, the more talents that I utilize, the more I'm honoring God and saying, here, I'm using what you've given me.
mm.
Because we tend to ask for more of things.
Sure.
And it's like, why? This is my humanistic thinking, right? Why would I give you more of this when you're not even utilizing that?
I gotta sip my tea.
I shall sip mine as well.
You are. Go ahead, Frog. We're gonna get to that. You're so right, though.
Right.
And then my question, and this is not even on, because you see, y'all, she be bringing these gems. You reference the Bible.
Hmm.
Can clients of yours not be Christian?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Okay, and how does
Oh,
that
yeah.
still resonate with?
Yeah, because it's not about my belief system.
Mm,
So my clients are bringing their belief systems. I've had atheists, I've had agnostic, I've had Muslim, I've had Jehovah's Witness, I've had Baptist, I've had Kojic, I done had a lot of in these 19 years of private practice.
amazing.
I have had so many different beliefs, universal, creator, spiritual,
Mhm,
no religion, right? I've had
mhm.
a lot. And my thing is, what is your belief system?
Okay.
Because the whole thing is, it is to help you
Mm,
through this human process.
mm,
So we need to make sure you're actualizing it and utilizing it effectively. And
mm.
if it's not working for you, then there's a disconnect somewhere. Either you're espousing it, but you don't believe it, or you don't know it, or you're having difficulty applying it.
Wow, that's a deep. I know y'all writing this down because write it down for me and email it to me. This is, you're just, I mean, this is so deep. How did you get to where you are? I mean, you're a doctor.
Mhm.
Did you know that you were always going to be a doctor?
Sixth grade.
And what was that journey? Because I'm just listening to you and I just picture young people, all people. Like, how do
Mhm.
this, maybe this is something that I want. Maybe I want my own private practice. What was that trajectory like?
Yeah. So sixth grade career day, I remember one of my girlfriend's fathers was a psychiatrist. And I asked her what was the difference between a psychiatrist and a psychologist. And so she explained the difference. And I said, okay. And I said, do I still get to be a doctor? And she said, yes. And I said, okay. And I was making a decision because my paternal grandfather was an MD. And then
An MD.
yes.
What
And
did he
then
do?
he was a general practitioner. He delivered most of the black people in Oxford County, Pennsylvania, and treated them.
And real quick, what was his name?
His name is Dr. Orville Russell Walls Sr.
Y'all write this down. Okay, go
That's
ahead.
okay. You could do your research. His house, the house that my father grew up in, and His practice was in the house in Kennett Square on Linden Street. It's part of the walking tour. It's part of the Black History tour. So you can go out there and see the house. They'll talk about him and so forth. He's in most of the books out there that talk about that area. And if you meet a Black person of a certain age who's from that area, you can talk to him. Most likely they knew him. And then my father was a veterinarian, who was Dr. Orville Russell Walls Jr. And he was one of the first three Black veterinarians in the state of Pennsylvania. And one of the first three, I believe, to have his own private practice, which he opened in 1976.
Y'all hear this? Wow.
Okay. So I knew that I wanted to be a doctor and I wanted to be the first female Dr. Walls, which is why I do not have my husband's last name.
Are you the first female?
You better believe it. Okay. So that's what I was thinking about in the sixth grade. As one of my classmates says to me, we were thinking about what barrettes we were going to make. You over there planning your whole life.
And this is what I tell. Do y'all see what I'm saying again? Do y'all see what I'm saying? That's phenomenal. Phenomenal. And not, you didn't just stop there. You created a practice that has an acronym and that you actually take seriously enough to help your clients become their greatest self.
That's right.
I mean, everything was intentional.
Everything was intentional. I mean, even the book. So I wrote the book in Brazil.
Tell us about the book. What book did you write?
I wrote, my first book was The Greatest Soul Journey. And that one, that's that one.
Please show. Get closer.
Yes, there we go.
Yes.
Look, there we go.
Yes.
Okay. And so that one was written in Brazil. I needed to get away. I had just got finished at Green Street Friends, and I was just finishing my tenure as the president of the Delaware Valley Association of Black Psychologists. And I just needed some time.
Sure.
And so I spun the globe to figure out where I would go. And my finger landed on Savannah at first. And I love Savannah. I love Savannah. I love Savannah food. I love the culture. And I said, no, I need to go somewhere where I do not speak the language, because if not, people going to talk to me. And I'm going to listen and I'm going to talk back.
Right.
And I need to rest. Like I needed quiet time. And so my older brother was kind enough and gifted me a trip because his friend ran trips to Brazil.
Amazing.
And so off I went to Brazil by myself. And I spent the first 5 days in my room. And my guides, God bless them, they were like, don't you want to go? I said, I cannot leave this place. I have to stay in. I just need to be quiet. And then I was awakened and it was like, it's time to write. And I went out on the porch, the balcony, and I sat out there and I wrote. And I wrote several books that day. But out of all of those books, that was the one that I pulled out. And so I pulled it out and I gave it to one of my guides. I said, would you please read this? And so she's like, you just wrote this outside? I say, yeah. And so she went into the room and she was a fitness trainer. And when she came out, she was sweating. Her face was red. She's like, I've never read anything like this before in my life. She's like, this thing has changed my life.
Wow.
I said, well, thank you kindly. And then I went on to come home and self-publish it.
That is phenomenal.
Yeah, so that was 2009.
Oh my gosh. And when we get this book, what can you walk us through it? Is it entirely reading? Is it journaling? What?
It is the combination. So it's food for thought. Okay. So I break down each word. So, right, God, and it's up to you. Who is God to you? And then it's a series of pointed questions. So like that, who is God to you? How do you see God? What is your relationship like? What have you been told about God versus what have you experienced?
Wow.
God, because sometimes we've been trained and taught certain things, but it may not be in alignment with what our personal experience is. And we have to work through this is to the restoration of excellence.
Right.
We have to work through those internal contradictions that sometimes we are afraid to say out loud.
Mm.
All right. So I wanted to create space in the moment for people to write the information
Mm.
down and give them a chance to download it and read it, because many times people like to hold thoughts in their mind, but your working memory can only hold so much, so you
Mm.
just keep rerunning the same tape. And so it's not until we download it, get it out of our minds and put it on some paper and actually read what we wrote, that
Right.
we can start to make the necessary adjustments.
That is beautiful. Do you have any more self-help, self-love?
Type books?
Yes.
Yes. Well, the next one that I did that was more adult focused is called Live by the Spirit, and
Mm.
that is Inspired Thoughts, Volume
Wow.
1.
Uh-huh.
So I used to do a blog years ago, and Live by the Spirit was it. And so I just started pulling them out and creating, again, sharing stories,
Mm-hmm.
insightful moments, and then creating space for people to write what did that trigger inside of
Mm.
them. Because just like as I'm talking now, someone will listen to this and it'll make them think about something else that's relevant for them.
Right.
So I want you to be able to capture that, because that's insight and intel for
Mm.
you, again, for you to live your greatest life.
Oh my gosh. So how did you do that? Write self-help, self-love books and journaling
Mhm.
to transition into Froggy T and Bunny. What made you go from that to this? I mean, one would say adult to children, although, and you'll explain why it's also for adults too.
Yes,
What was that
yes.
transition? That
So,
process?
what's interesting is I had children. So when I wrote the first book, The Greatest Soul Journey, um, I would have children stop by the booth,
Mm,
and they would ask their parents or grandparents, could they have the book? And
wow,
I'm talking like 8 and 9 year olds. Like they would hear me explain the book to the adult. And then the children would say, so basically, like if I fill this book out, I'll have a roadmap to my greatest life. 100%, little one. Yes,
that's powerful.
exactly. So I knew that my writing could touch various ages. And I actually had an uncle call me one time. He said, you don't know me, but
Mm,
my, I don't remember, 9-year-old nephew bought your book and has been writing in it and filling it out. And I've never seen him engage with a book like this before. And I had to find out who was this person that created this book.
wow.
So it really started on the reverse. Even though I wrote for
Yes.
adults, I was letting adults know this book is great for children.
Wow.
And I always think conversations are important. Can you imagine sitting around as a family,
Right.
talking about transformation,
Yeah.
and saying, like, what it means is to change in your appearance or your character
Mm,
for the better. And then talking about how things used to make you angry but don't make you angry anymore. And what did you apply in your life to now help you work through anger? These would be
mm,
fantastic conversations to have,
absolutely.
right? And I'm a former early childhood, elementary, and middle school teacher,
Mhm.
former social skills consultant. So I've written social skills curriculum for
Mm,
schools. And so when it came to the adventures of Froggy T and Bunny, it actually started out as a poem to a friend for their birthday. I just didn't want to I didn't want to buy a birthday card. I had already
uh-huh.
done that. I want to do something a little bit more creative. And so I wrote the poem because they call me Bunny, because they say I have more energy than the Energizer Bunny. And so I was like, so in the poem, I said, but you're always hopping along with me. And
Mm,
their name is Thomas. I said, so now I W Froggy T.
I love it.
Right. And so in the poem, and then the poem stopped. But as I kept reading the poem, I was like, if you flesh this out a little bit more, this will be a really good children's story. So my plan was to do just that. And I did. And I was going, so I gave them the card, the poem, excuse me, and a little stuffed frog for their birthday that year. And that must have been maybe about 2009, 2010, somewhere
Mhm.
around there. And then my plan was to get it illustrated and surprise them with it for their birthday the
Uh-huh.
next year. I had no idea it would take me 10 years or so to find an illustrator.
Wow.
So I kept it a secret the whole time.
Uh-huh.
And then finally, one night I was out with his niece actually, and we were at a publishing event trying to figure out what to do with this book that I had yet to find an illustrator for. And I told her my plans was to have it animated and this my whole scale of what was going through my mind at that time. And she was like, "Well, why do you have to wait for the illustration before you do the animation?"
Mm.
And I said, I don't. I just saw it in that order, but it doesn't have to be in that order. Long story short, I said, hold on 1 second. I called my husband who knew an animator, Milton. I said, I need you to call Milton and set up a meeting immediately.
Uh-huh.
And he called Milton and he was like, Milton said he's available tonight at 9:45. It was 7:45, 8 o'clock. I said, don't worry, I'm on my way. I was in Jersey. It'll take me X number of minutes to get home. We gonna make it happen. And
Wow.
next thing you know, I was on the phone with him and I said, look, I have some character sketches that I like. Can you imitate those? And when his team looked at them, he said, we can, but when they did the illustration for the book
Mm-hmm.
versus the character for the animation, it looked too different.
Okay.
And I said, I need it to be closer. I said, well, can you all do the illustrations? He said, yeah, I have a whole illustration team. I was none the wiser. I just knew him as an animator.
Okay.
I didn't know that they did illustrate. I didn't know his whole production company at
Mm-hmm.
the time. So that's what happened. And then when they sent back one of the iterations of one of the images, it literally just opened my mind. And next thing you know, I saw a world beyond that one story. And I said, oh, it was this picture right here when they sent that.
Mm.
All of a sudden, I was like, there's life in the water. And
Mm.
what's behind the bush? You know, what's behind the
Mm.
tree and the ridge? And oh my goodness, and is there anybody in the house? And right, and then my mind was like psh, psh, psh. And then I said, well, it is called The Adventures of Froggy T and
Mm.
Bunny, which means it's more than one. And so it was like I have 30 years of
Wow.
experience plus of working with children, let alone my own life experiences that I
Uh-huh.
recall, um, and social skills, and being a consultant, leadership development,
Mm-hmm.
counseling. And it was like you can pour all of that into the books in a creative and unique way.
Wow. So how did you tell us about the series? The books.
So I ended up, as you know, the reunion was the first one.
Yes.
And really, the reunion is everything that my business mentor, Dr. Gordon, said to me the first day he met me.
Mm.
He saw me in the back of a meeting. He's like, "Hey, where you been? I haven't seen you in 40,000 years." And it was like, "Who is this man?" Right? Little did I know, who he would become in my life and, the impact. But it was a story about faith and friendship and the
Mm.
power of music, listening to your inner voice, your
Mm.
values, determination, perseverance, right? All of that. And then after that book, it was like, or actually in the process of finishing that book, it was like, well, what if we add some activities at the
Mhm.
end?
Mhm.
And so you can see from the first one where it's like two things to now in the later books, it's
Uh-huh.
like a whole bunch of pointed questions to get the children self-reflection is
Mm.
important, but also conversation starters, teachers,
Mm.
parents, older siblings, caretakers, to really start those conversations, to teach feelings. And then the book started coming, But then what happens is certain characters started jumping out in my head and I needed to see them.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, I wrote feeling second, but the Bully Brothers
Uh-huh.
jumped in my head and I needed to see baby Bully Jerome with his little rough self.
Yes.
So,
Look at that. Oh, they look like they part of a gang.
I'm saying, and he has a gold chain with a pacifier around his neck, right?
I just love it. And look at the animation. I mean, it's
I
phenomenal.
know the color and the facial
Yes.
expressions. And that's why I love the process. And we go back, we go through each of them
Mm-hmm.
and checking in and, did we capture the face? Did we not
Mm-hmm.
capture it? It's
Mm-hmm.
also important. And then to be able to talk about, here's a topic about bullying,
Yes.
and which is a huge topic. And we
Mm-hmm.
know a lot of times families want children to respond to bullying in one way,
Correct.
schools want them to respond in a different way. That creates a conflict within the child many times.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, an opportunity to create conversation. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I remember growing up and learning so many words in books because they had glossaries.
Yes. Yes.
So I wanted to make sure I put a glossary in every book. I also
Mm-hmm.
knew it was important as far as libraries are concerned,
Mm-hmm.
that a glossary was present. So Bunny Gets Bullied came out. So I'm like, okay, there go those two.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm like, now it's time to release feelings because it
Mm-hmm.
is important that we acknowledge our feelings and understand that we all respond to feelings differently.
Absolutely.
Okay. And so in this one and feelings, and that's just as a sample across the front.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, Froggy T wakes up in a bad mood. He says something really rude to Bunny. Now she's mad. That's exactly. She's mad. And
Mm-hmm.
so she has to manage her feelings,
Right.
but then she's also still worried about her friend.
Mm-hmm.
And so now, how do I manage my feelings and also allow him to deal with his feelings? And so she chooses to turn to an elder and seek counsel,
Mm-hmm.
whereas he chooses to isolate. And the reality is, we all manage our feelings differently. It's not right or wrong. And so I'm
Correct.
very mindful about that. And that's one thing that some of the children have given me feedback. They said, I like the fact that one wasn't trying to prove that their way was better, but
Correct.
that they each were allowed to have their own ways of managing
Wow.
different feelings.
Wow.
So, yeah, so there was that one. And
That
then,
is deep.
yes, and then Froggy Foo and Mungu
Yes.
came about because my mother, because every time Bunny Gets Bullied would be discussed, she would be like, I would sock that little thing. I
Because
would
she don't
tear
play.
them up. Right, exactly, right. All that North Philly started coming out of her.
Okay.
And I said, but mom, I'm teaching a different way. I'm teaching
Mm-hmm.
self-control, self-management. Yeah, whatever. And I sat with myself and I said, okay, right. She's not lying.
Yeah.
That is a real response
Yes.
when someone is getting bullied. So
Yes.
what do we need to do? So I thought about Wicked.
Mm.
And although I haven't seen Wicked and I've wanted to see Wicked for years,
Mm-hmm.
there's Wicked, there is, goodness, I forget what it's called, but it's the three pigs, but it's coming from the wolf's
Okay.
point of view.
Okay.
And that book is hilarious, hilarious. But right, Wicked is about coming from the Wicked Witch's point of view.
Wow.
And so I said, okay, what's another perspective that we
Mm.
need to take a look at? Because my mother's, she's not alone
Correct.
in that
At
reality,
all.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so with Froggy Foo and Mungu,
Uh-huh.
that's what I sat down and I said, the day Bunny was bullied, she
Mm-hmm.
called Froggy T sounding so upset. As her friend, he wanted to do something that he wouldn't regret. To be honest, some retaliation thoughts did cross his mind, and he thought about turning into Froggy Foo just one more time. Okay?
And that's real.
It very real.
Yeah.
And so this story goes through his process of, do I turn into Froggy Foo or don't I? And then we find out who Froggy Foo is and what was his life as Froggy Foo. And I love it. I love my editor. She said, I love all of them. She said, but I have to tell you, I literally laughed out loud while reading that one. She was like, I wasn't ready.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
just all comes together how in your practice,
Yeah.
in your self-help love, journaling books,
Mhm.
in Froggy T, Bunny and Froggy
Yeah.
T and Bunny,
Mhm.
coming to your greatest self. It's
Yeah.
all interconnected.
It all is. It all is. And that's it, right? Knowing again, so here we go back to activates talents. There was no part of me in 2005 up in that said I want to be a children's book author. In 2005 there was no part of me that said I wanted to be an author.
Right, right.
Okay. But when I stop and I think about it, I started writing children's books in the second or third grade. I used to write my stories as to why the grass was green and how clumsy Jesus was. I went to Catholic school. So, right, I very much personified these entities and made them relatable in my concrete mind. And then I would draw my illustrations and I would ask for permission to go down to the pre K through kindergarten and read my stories.
Wow.
And they would let me go down and read. So, it's been in me, but I didn't think about it. So the fact that it's reactivated is fascinating. And for my grade school to have me come back and do book reads from pre-K all the way through 8th grade, yeah, it's a beautiful thing. They have all of my books in the library. I know. It's very special.
That is beautiful.
Yeah.
This is why I couldn't describe it. Like, I think people are going to understand. It gives me chills. My first question is, where can everybody not
Yes.
only find you, but
Yes.
purchase these books? Because this is serious.
Yes, yes. So they can go to Amazon and you can put in The Adventures of Froggy T and Bunny. They'll come up. You can always go to my website, askdrwalls.com, AskDrWalls.com. You'll see a link for Froggy T and Bunny. You can click on that and that'll take you everywhere. I also do some book reads and activities and soundscapes for soothing sounds. If you need help calming down anxiety, stress, just need to. I do that on their at Froggy T and Bunny YouTube channel, and that's Bunny with an IE, BUNNIE. So yeah, so they're there, and I love on the YouTube channel. You'll get to hear some of the readings with. I have my voiceover artists, Shane Frederick and Stephanie Renee, the voice of Bunny and Froggy T, and then my last one, Clueless Careless Colt, that just came out in May, where Colt is dealing with being new to school and not knowing how to get along and just saying all types of things out his mouth that are turning people off. And Bunny has to make a decision. Is she going to help him or is she going to shun him like everybody else? So, but so you might hear some new voices in this one. You'll meet some new characters and so yeah, so it's a whole world, and I have other stories that are written will be illustrated over the next couple of years. I try to release 1 or 2 books a year, so we're good until about 2029 at this point.
Of course. Of course.
We got things to do. I'm telling you, I'm trying to get that Froggy T and Bunny ride. Look,
Your greatest life.
that's exactly. See, you get it. See, my thing, there's Ephesians 3, verse 20. It says, God does it better you could ever think, dare to dream, or imagine. I have a fantastic imagination. And so God does it better than that. But at least I have to put it in the realm of possibility. And I let God do the rest.
And that leads me to the final question.
Yes.
In the beginning, I asked, who do you say you are?
Hmm.
So my final question is, after us listening, watching you,
Mhm.
who will we say you are?
A lady that gets no sleep. But I do sleep. That's what most people say. They're like, "What in the world?" So, who will you say we are? I love that question.
Thank you.
I love it.
Thank you.
I think you will say that I'm a person who is committed
Mm,
to helping people of various ages
mm,
in various ways, in numerous ways, and working actively to live and stay on and with purpose.
mm.
Yeah.
Are you accepting new clients?
I actually am. I have a very small window right now because a project just came to the end. People can go on to my website again, Ask Dr. Walls 525 AskDrWalls.com. I'm sorry, Ask Dr. Walls 525 is YouTube. AskDrWalls.com is the website. And you will see a tab where you can schedule for a brief 15-minute free consultation where we can talk, show up knowing what your goals are,
Mm,
and we can talk to see if I'm the best fit. Because here's the reality: I have a lot of colleagues that are clinicians, and everyone who I come into contact with may not be the best fit
sure.
for me. And my goal is for you to get the best help that you can get. And even if that's not me, that's fine.
Mm,
Okay. So once I hear what someone is going through,
mhm,
I may say you would be a good fit with so and so.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Y'all here. I mean, she's we said educator, a leader, a public speaker, facilitator, but let me tell you something. She is a humanitarian. She
Hmm.
shared what's on her heart, and we done. I mean, Humanitarian Heartbeat podcast. She
Yes.
is that's what she is. That's what she is.
Thank you.
That's what she is. And I
Thank you.
thank you for being my guest.
Oh,
Phenomenal.
thank you for having me.
Absolutely. You guys have heard the Humanitarian Heartbeat podcast. You heard Dr. Walls say, ask
Mhm.
drwalls.com. Follow her on YouTube, Ask Dr. Walls 525. Follow her on Instagram, and let's get it done so we can live our
That's right.
greatest life.
Got that right.
There we go. Thank you so much, Dr. Walls.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Of everyone here at the Humanitarian Heartbeat podcast, we thank you, the listeners. You could be doing anything else with your time, but you decided to spend time with us. And for that, we thank you. We feel so special. To our guests, thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to impart wisdom, information, and knowledge. What a blessing that is. To all of the listeners, please make sure to follow us on social media at the Humanitarian Heartbeat podcast. Of course, you can listen to us on your favorite platforms. Find us on YouTube, and make sure that no matter what you do in this life, you follow your heart. God bless.